There's something unsettling about being deep in the wilderness. No cell service, no crowds, just you and the unknown. But sometimes, the scariest thing on the trail isn't nature. It's what or who you run into out there. These are true hiking stories that will make you think twice before your next trek. Hi, I don't usually write into these things, but I came across your channel and figured you'd appreciate this story. It's not paranormal or anything, but it was one of the creepiest and most unsettling experiences of my life. A couple of years ago, I took a seasonal job working in a national park. I won't say which one, but it's a big one in the US. And has a ton of wooded areas and dirt roads that go on forever. I was living alone in a little trailer about 3 miles off the main campground. The only people I would see most days were tourists passing through, or the occasional park ranger driving by. For the most part, it was peaceful. I'd work my shift during the day, then hike or drive back to my trailer in the evenings. But about a month into staying there, something strange started happening. Almost every other night, as I was heading back down the dirt road toward my trailer, I'd hear this music. It sounded like a music box, or one of those old-fashioned ice cream trucks. You know, that slow, tiny, cheerful tune? It was like that, but faint and echoing through the trees. The weird part was, it always sounded like it was above me. Not from the woods or the road, but like it was coming from somewhere higher up, almost in the air. And at first, I thought maybe there was a cabin or some kind of overlook up the hill with someone playing music. But the sound never got closer or farther away, no matter how much I walked. It was just there, hanging in the background until I got to my trailer. A couple of times I even turned off my car just to listen better, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. One evening, I decided to try and find the source. It had been bugging me for weeks, and I wanted to put an end to it. After my shift, I passed my trailer and just kept walking down the road in the direction the music seemed to be coming from. I did not have a flashlight, just my phone, and the sun was dipping low, but I figured I'd only be gone a few minutes. The music kept playing, that same slow, tiny tune. I still couldn't tell if I was getting closer. The woods were thick on both sides, and it was dead quiet except for my boots on the dirt and that music floating around above me. I had my eyes on the treetops, scanning for anything. A cabin window, a speaker, something. That's when I almost stepped on a snake. I looked down at the last second and jumped back, heart pounding, but the snake did not move. It was a copperhead, stretched out in the middle of the road. It was definitely dead. I looked closer and realized it wasn't just one. There were about 6 of them, all copperheads, all laid out flat across the road, within about 20 feet of each other. Every single one of them was facing the same direction, like they had been deliberately placed there. No bite marks, no blood, nothing that made sense to me. Just 6 dead snakes lined up headfirst towards the woods. Something about it felt wrong immediately. The hair on the back of my neck went up, and suddenly that music sounded a whole lot less innocent. I just froze for a few seconds, staring at the snakes, not sure what to do. There was no way in hell I was stepping over them, and turning my back on the woods felt worse. Eventually, I backed up the way I'd come and walked fast to my trailer. I grabbed my car keys, thinking I could just drive over the snakes instead of stepping over them on foot, But when I got back to the spot, the music was gone, dead silent, and all 6 snakes were gone too. Not dragged off, not squished, just gone, like they'd never been there. I stood there for a minute, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But I knew what I saw. I'd been close enough to make out their patterns and see their heads all pointed in the same direction. For the rest of my time there, the music never came back. I told a couple of friends about it later, and they mentioned that part of the park used to have an old prison farm called the P Farm, where bad stuff supposedly went down decades ago. Some people claim the area is haunted, but honestly, I think there's a much scarier possibility. Someone was out there messing with people on purpose, and they were close enough to watch me that night. I still don't know what that music was, who or what lined up those snakes, or why it stopped once I went back for my car. But I'll tell you this, I did not go down that road again after dark for the rest of my time in that park. Last October, I went on a long weekend kayak camping trip up in the Adirondacks. This was the 2nd year in a row I'd gone with my partner's parents. The group is usually a handful of adults and a couple of little kids, ages 3 to 8. It's kind of a tradition now. We kayak in about 10 miles and set up camp in the middle of nowhere, away from everything. The trip is always late in the season, partly because everyone's schedules are nuts, but also because that time of year the river is practically empty. Overnight temperatures are cold, sometimes below freezing, but the days are still warm enough to enjoy. It's peaceful, or at least it usually is. The river we go on is calm, just slow-moving water. No rapids. You can drift most of the way if you want to. There are campsites spaced out along the way, but there's one stretch where the land is privately owned. There's no camping allowed in that section, just a muddy, shallow area where you usually have to get out and drag the kayaks through. On the 2nd day of the trip, when we reached that shallow section, I hopped out to help pull the other kayaks through the mud. I was standing there, knee-deep in muck, when I noticed something up on the hill overlooking the river. 2 people, dressed in full camo, sitting and watching us. At first, I figured hunters, but there's no hunting allowed in that area, and no legal campsites nearby. It's private land, and honestly, there's no reason for anyone to just be sitting there. I pointed them out to my partner's dad, and he got this look on his face that made me uneasy. He's been coming to this river for years, knows it like the back of his hand, and even he thought it was weird. A couple of others saw them too, and the mood shifted a little. No one said much, but we all wanted to move on fast. We dragged the boats through, got back in, and started paddling. I turned around one last time before the bend in the river, and the people were gone. Just empty hillside. We pushed on for another couple of miles and set up camp at one of the designated spots. This late in the year, it's quiet out there. You barely hear any birds, just the occasional squirrel or chipmunk rustling in the leaves. It was getting dark while we were setting up dinner. We had a fire going, the kids were bundled up, and everything felt normal again. Then, out of nowhere, we heard it. Down by the water, not far from camp, someone made this loud "hoo, hoo" sound, like an owl call, but not right. It sounded off, too deep, too slow, like someone trying to imitate an owl, but doing a bad job of it. Everyone who had seen the camo people froze. The kids went quiet because the adults suddenly went dead silent. We sat there listening, and a few seconds later, there was splashing. Not near the shore, more like in the middle of the river. Too loud to be a fish. It sounded like someone wading or pushing through the water, but we couldn't see anything through the dark. We're not exactly a heavily armed group. A couple of small knives, a hatchet for firewood, and that's about it. But everyone grabbed whatever they had and stayed close to the fire. My partner's brother decided to go check the riverbank. I followed him down there, and we scanned the water. Nothing. No light, no movement, no ripples. Just the river flowing like normal. We waited for a minute or two before heading back to the camp. No one said it out loud, but we were all on edge after that. We took turns keeping watch while everyone else tried to sleep. Nothing else happened that night. No more noises, no splashing. The next morning, there weren't any tracks on the riverbank. We did not see a single person the rest of the trip. I don't know who those people were on the hill, or if the noises were even related, but it did not feel like a coincidence. There's no reason for anyone to be out there like that, watching us, making noises, moving through the water in the dark. It was the kind of thing that makes you realize how vulnerable you are that far out, with no cell service and nothing but miles of woods in every direction. We've talked about going again this year, but honestly, I'm not sure I want to. That trip changed the way I think about being in the middle of nowhere. Hey Spooky, I don't usually tell this story because I've never been able to explain it properly without sounding like I'm exaggerating. But since you said you take real scary experiences for your channel, here's mine. Back when I was in college in North Georgia, night hiking was one of those dumb, we're young and invincible things my friends and I did a lot. The trails near the campus were easy. We all knew them well, and the mountains felt safe back then. I'd been out enough times that the woods at night did not bother me anymore. That familiarity gave me a false sense of security I didn't really understand until this night. It was fall. I want to say late September or early October. The air was cool, but not cold, and there was a full moon. I was a little stoned, not out of my mind, just buzzed enough that being outside sounded like a great idea. I grabbed a flashlight, left my dorm, and drove out to this trail maybe 15 minutes from my campus. It was a simple loop, about a mile long, flat, not many roots or rocks to trip over. I'd done it dozens of times with my friends. This was my first time doing it alone at night. The moonlight was strong enough that I barely needed my flashlight. Everything had this bluish glow, and it was dead quiet except for the crickets. For the first 10 or 15 minutes, it felt incredible, peaceful. I remember thinking, this is why I do this. This is what life should feel like. Well, that changed fast. I don't even know what triggered it at first, but this wave of unease hit me. Not the normal, you're alone in the dark feeling, but the kind that makes your stomach flip and your skin crawl. Maybe 3 seconds later, I heard it. A man's voice, crying somewhere ahead of me, off to the right side of the trail. It was distant, but not far. At first, my brain jumped to normal explanations. Maybe someone was hurt. Maybe a hiker got lost. My instinct was to call out, to offer help. But my body would not let me. I just froze and listened. The crying wasn't normal. It was broken and uneven, like someone trying to sob quietly but failing. Then it shifted into these strange, half-babbled sounds, almost like nonsense words, but urgent. There was this high-pitched tone underneath it, like he was holding back a scream that never came out. It did not sound like grief anymore. It sounded wrong. My gut told me, do not let him know you're here. I crouched a little, like that would somehow make me invisible, and slowly turned back the way I came. My heart was pounding so hard I was scared that he'd hear it. I kept my steps as light as possible. Every twig underfoot felt like a gunshot. I was convinced that if I made a noise, the crying would stop and turn into something much worse. A yell, footsteps coming toward me, maybe someone crashing out of the trees. I never took my eyes off the trail in front of me, but my ears were locked on that sound. It went on and on, same strange rhythm, sobbing and gibbering, like he'd been doing it all night. It felt deliberate, like whoever it was wanted someone to hear him. The farther I got, the quieter it became. It did not stop abruptly, just faded until the woods were silent again. Even then, I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept expecting a figure to step into the trail behind me, or for a hand to grab me out of the dark. When I saw my car through the trees, I ran the last few feet, slammed the door, and locked it immediately. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the keys once before I could start the engine. I did not breathe normally again until I was halfway back to campus. Then everything hit me at once, like a full-body panic attack. I've thought about it a lot over the years, wondering if it was just some unstable guy living in the woods, or someone trying to lure people off the trail. I don't know what would have happened if I'd called out, or if I'd had my flashlight on and he'd seen me. What I do know is that my instincts screamed at me to stay quiet and leave, and I'm 100% certain listening to them kept me safe. That was over 20 years ago, and I still won't go hiking alone at night.